Hi, I'm Mary Jane, an Italian currently living in the United States. In this video, I'm going to reflect about an aspect in which the American society differentiates from the Italian society. Super quick announcement, my course of English pronunciation for Italians is finally open! And thank you to all those who pre-ordered the course this past week. You were so many, it was mind-blowing. Because some of you missed the mega discount I offered on the pre-orders, I decided to offer another discount just for the first 20 people who will enroll the course. They get 20% off. All the informations are in the description. This topic came out first during one of my recent live streams, where one of my subscribers, 𝘱𝙬𝙍𝙍, who lives in Philadelphia here in the United States, mentioned that he was part of a volunteer group for protection of the trees in his city. And that's where a conversation started about how communities form in the United States, and that gave me the input to compare that to the Italian situation, which is quite different in my opinion. Here in the United States, I've observed that the way a community of people forms is very often based on common interests. So it's people that share the same passion, for example, or people that go to the same place, that like the same sports, and they gather to watch it together and stuff like that, which I find, as an Italian, extremely cool, because I find that in Italy it's much more difficult to form a group of people that you feel friends with that is based on a common interest or a shared passion. So how does communities form in Italy, you might ask? Well, you enter into the very first and most important community of your life when you are born, really, which is your family. And I'm talking especially about the close family right now, so parents and siblings. If I compare the Italian family to the American family, I notice quite a bit of differences. American families tend to be way more fragmented than Italian ones. It's not rare at all in this country to find parents that split up, and in some cases one of them or even both of them even created their own new families. So if a kid is in the middle of this situation, he doesn't have one family anymore, he has two. Which obviously has its own positive aspects, because if you have two families, you don't feel very much accepted in one because of your ideas, for example, or your way of being simply. You have sort of like a backup family, a spare family. But it also means that this gives you less sense of stability. For example, towards the middle of November here in the United States, people start to plan their Thanksgiving, which is the most family-driven kind of holiday in the United States. It's like Christmas for us in Italy, so you usually spend Thanksgiving with your family. And if you talk with an average American millennial, let's say, very often they are gonna say that they're gonna go first to their mother's house and then to their father's house for Thanksgiving. And that is really not very common in Italy. Our families are way more traditional. Divorce is not that common. It is naturally an option, but families where the parents are divorced are not the standard at all. Also, another thing that I've noticed is that American families tend to be less linked to their house and even their town. They tend to move a lot, whereas in my experience in Italy, obviously families in the cities tend to move more often than families outside of cities. I grew up in the countryside and there is one family house. My parents still live there, and when I go visit them, I still have my bedroom there. Even if I'm 30 years old, I'm married, and my parents bought the house when they got married. So our entire life as a family rotates around that house. And I could not imagine my family without that house, honestly. It's like, like a polar star in the world where I know that it's there and I can go back there whenever I'm in need. I'm a very curious person. I stick my nose into other people's business when I meet them, and I do so also with my American friends. So I always try to interview them about their childhood, about their family, about how they grew up, where they grew up. And I can tell you that I have yet to find a person of more or less my age that considers one house as his or her home. Americans usually, while growing up, they changed 2 or 3 houses. Sometimes they even moved from one city to another. Sometimes they even moved from one state to another, very often from one side of the country to the other. So it's very, very different situation than Italian families. We settle in one place and usually we don't move at all. There is one house that is the family house, parents stay there, and everyone else can go, travel, move, get married, settle down, create another family, but the family house is still the one where you grew up as a kid. So of course, in the United States, family is also the first and one of the most important communities that people are part of. But in comparison to Italy, I think it's not as strong. Also here I've seen cases where an individual gets completely detached from his family because he doesn't share the mentality, the ideas, he's not accepted, or there were family problems, so he just decides to ignore the facts that he has a family. And that to me is just mind-blowing. In my experience, having a family is so difficult. I am the last of 3 kids and I have very different lifestyles than my 2 siblings, which is caused by having a different mentality and point of view on life. Also, my parents have never had the most peaceful marriage, but they never split. I could never imagine my life not being a part of a family. It's just unthinkable for me. So in the United States, I feel like people are more close to their families while growing up as kids and teenagers, and then in their 20s they kind of start to go in their own direction, and then in their adult life they don't really care so much about their family. So you might ask, how is the social life of an American grown-up? Well, again, if I have to compare it with the Italian experience of a grown-up, I see that Italians are all family and friends, where the friends are very often the same people that you were friends with when you were a teenager, or you were in university with, or even you were friends when you were a kid in kindergarten. It's very rare that I see that in the United States. I've seen it a little bit more in more rural areas. In the cities is of course out of discussion. So again, who do Americans hang out with if not with family and old friends? Well, they make new friends. And how do they make these new friends? Based on my observations, they make them because they have interests in common. So for example, you attend an acting class in the new city where you moved, and there you meet people, and with some of those people you become friends. Or you go to the bar to see the game of your favorite team, and there you find people who support the same team, and you start seeing them once a week, every week, because you see the game together, and then you start considering them friends. Or you start volunteering for the same cause, or you go to the same gym. So from my point of view, this is absolutely cool, because in Italy it's really hard to form groups of friends based on interests that you have in common. As I said, in Italy the situation is way more static with relationships, so you cannot really expect to have a group of friends that are very close and that are different than your family and old friends. Also, I think it's really nice to have friends that you can share your passions with, and you can, have conversations about your shared hobby or shared interest, organize trips together, because at that point, if you share one big passion, you are probably sharing many more things, many more interests, many more hobbies. So this fact about the United States is absolutely amazing for me. But again, there are downsides as well. In fact, if your group of friends and your main friends are all part of the group where you already share some interest, some perspectives on the world, some views on life in general, it's gonna be very much likely that you're gonna also have very close opinions about many topics. And that is surely very comforting and very reassuring to hang out in an environment where everyone is agreeing with you. But the fact that I'm part of my family, for example, and I'm kind of forced to hang out with people that have zero interest in common with me, that forces me to have a confrontation with other perspectives on the world, with people who have completely different opinions than mine about how to live your life, about how the world should go, about politics. And let's talk about politics, for example. Here in the United States, I don't see very many people belonging to different parties or supporting different parties being friends, or at least hanging out in the same group of people. On the contrary, Republicans and Democrats usually are very careful to keep separated, and here hang out the Republicans, here hang out the Democrats. They don't really mesh together that much, and that to me is quite scary, because if you only hang out with people who already have your same opinion on politics, how are you going to be able to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand them before forming your own opinion? My idea is that if you only hang out with people who have already the same opinion that you have, the same initial opinion, you're just gonna keep having that opinion, and instead of it being enriched by different ideas and different perspectives, it's just gonna be enriched by the same opinion. So it's just gonna get stronger and more polarized. In Italy, you're certainly not gonna find this big group of friends where half of the people are right-winged and the other half is left-winged. We have divisions based on politics as well, of course. But I think I would be able to have a confrontation with someone who thinks differently than I do much easier in Italy than in the United States. So finally, I continued that conversation that we started in that live stream. The conversation back then was interrupted by, I don't know, the live stream was interrupted while we were starting this very interesting conversation, and I always thought I'm gonna make a video about this. So here it is. Now I would like to know what you think about this. First of all, do you think that I misunderstood the situation, how it is in the United States? I'm certainly biased by the fact that I spend most of my time in a city, but you certainly know that I spend quite a bit of time also in rural areas in the United States. Or if you're Italian, do you think I misunderstood the situation in Italy? Maybe I gave a very important role to family that is not accurate. I don't know. And also, how do you think that we could improve both of models of society and find the middle way where we can have groups of friends that share the same interests with us, but we can also keep maintaining that confrontation with people that think differently than we do? Let me know in the comments. I'm Mary Jane, and I'll see you next Sunday.